Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Woody Allen Retrospective podcast with me, your host, Donald Wanda, and that man, Simon Red. And before you say anything, Simon, I've got a special introduction I made just for you.
Simon Red, ladies and gentlemen, your friendly neighborhood asshole.
Ah, a sex bot. Thank you. Straight from Japan. You shouldn't have paid for delivery. I would have helped you out.
If you missed our last discussion, we actually spoke about... What did we actually speak about, Simon? I've already forgotten.
A movie. I'll give you another hint. It was directed by Woody Allen.
We spoke about The Purple Rose of Cairo.
There you go.
Yeah, a very well-loved movie. Back and forth. If you're on YouTube, you can click on the top right-hand corner because I'll put a link to go back to that discussion. But we're moving forward. But guys listening on the podcast who use iOS or Android, Apple, Stitcher Radio, I want to let you guys know, as well as the YouTube guys know, for this retrospective, we now have a website in development, which is WoodyAllenRetro.com. If you go there right now, you'll see the playlist of, the recordings and the videos right now. It's going to be better, but just for the record, guys, the website's coming. We've got a playlist on YouTube, links on the podcast. I'll put everything down in the description. But guys, we heard the feedback, and we're glad that we're just curating all the videos into one place, WoodyAllenRetro.com, as well as the hashtag you can use on Google, hashtag WoodyAllenRetro. And I'm glad we got that sorted, and some of you guys have yeah, that's good, glad you guys have done it. So stay tuned and let's see how the development of that site goes. But before we get into the next movie, guys, as usual, we have to, for you, some of you anal people that might complain, let you know that this is a spoiler discussion, as they all are. We talk about what we like, what we hate, and we talk about it in detail, so we ruin the plot points. Guys, watch the movies before you check out these discussions, because we're going to ruin it, and we want you to get that first-hand experience before we dig into it, and it's much more enjoyable that way. So with all that out of the way, we're going to talk about the next movie. And Simon, if you'd like to introduce it so we can dig it right in.
Oh yeah, sure thing. I mean, we're just going to jump right over to the following year after Purple Rose of Cairo, which is 1986. And this movie's called Hannah and Her Sisters. And I got a very quick backstory for you. That basically, for those of you wondering, where does this rank in terms of the legacy of Woody Allen's old school filmography? This is usually mentioned right up there with Annie Hall and Manhattan. It's very, very, very highly regarded. So my first time viewing of this was kind of tainted a bit. And I had to watch it twice for this review because I was just expecting something along those lines, something on that level. And what you're really getting here is another attempt at a slice of life dissection of the human condition, similar to Interiors.
Yeah. Because
once again, you have it's centered around the family, sisters, as the title tells you. Mainly Hannah, played by Mia Farrow, as the title character. I believe Lee, played by Barbara Hershey, and Holly, played by Diane Keaton. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
I think that's right.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of actors are coming back from the last film. Purple Rose of Cairo starred Mia Farrow, and Diane Keaton was in there as well as the escort or prostitute. So Woody Allen reusing some of his favorite actors, which is not a bad thing at all. I think Tony Roberts has a small role in this as well. But it's not a traditional narrative. We're actually following not only the three sisters, but three separate plot points that are all intertwined basically by Hannah herself. So everybody's kind of linked to her. We have a plot point with her husband, played by Michael Caine. I didn't even know about that joke, by the way. yeah, sorry. Michael Caine. Yeah, exactly. And he is having sort of a crush on Lee, one of Hannah's sisters. Then also we follow Holly, who's the troubled sister, and has sort of a midlife crisis coming off of addiction to drugs. And then we follow Woody Allen, who plays Mickey, who's Hannah's first husband. And they had sort of a troubled breakup due to the fact that Mickey was sterile. He couldn't have kids. And then they decided to have Tony Roberts, who once again plays Woody Allen's best friend, which is kind of his staple role in the Woody Allen franchise, the Woody Allen cinematic universe.
Yeah.
So he became not only the surrogate dad, but at that time he was also Mickey's partners, so they were like partners in business and family, which obviously went south. They got a divorce, and for a brief while, Hannah tried to set him up with Holly. So there's that connection going on. And after a Thanksgiving dinner where the movie opens, we basically follow these plot lines on how they develop and where the movie takes us. But there's much more to it. And it's more simple than it sounds when you do a plot summary. So I guess that's one of the more skillful things Woody Allen made in this film, or was able to achieve, that he made it very everyday. The characters seem very real and the stories seem very real life, if that makes sense. And I think that was the ultimate goal. But this is going to be more of your movie, because I'm just going to have mostly criticisms for it. So I want to hear how you felt about it, because I think you like it a bit better than I do.
Well, guys, I want to say before we get started, I think we're going to get a lot of hate for this discussion because, like you said in the beginning, this is a very fawned over movie in the Woody Allen filmography. And I'm going to start off by just saying something people are going to hate. I couldn't remember the plot of this movie before we watched it. This is not one of the movies, like some of his other ones, I've rewatched over the years. I couldn't remember what it was about. And when I rewatched it, and when I finished, I was like, oh, now I know why I couldn't remember. Because Woody Allen does so many of these family, romance, relationship, marriage dramas that it all kind of melded into one kind of movie. I mean, I could name drop and talk about husbands and wives and in TVs. He's done so much that I actually couldn't separate this movie on its own. So in Woody Allen's filmography, that can be kind of a downside. We actually mentioned this on the other one. When you make a movie every single year and you use similar story ideas, for better or for worse, they can meld together, or sometimes they can stand out. So yeah. I mean, that's why I held off a bit about actually going into the thick of the plot with the summary, because it's actually better to just focus on the trappings, which kind of separate this film from the others with the sister aspect. Yeah. Before we do that, let's talk about the actors, because honestly, I think Woody Allen, and actually not only do I want to talk about the actors, I actually want to speak about some of the making behind the movie, because honestly, this is another movie, and I have to say this, in general, some of the movie making things behind the scenes of Woody Allen making these movies are actually just as interesting, if not more interesting, as the movie itself. Especially with this movie, because I didn't know, and actually I always talk about the Woody Allen Pages Watchers Guide. He did the research, so again, I read a lot of this online and I checked some of it as well, just to back up, make sure that it's kind of factual. So Michael Caine, Woody Allen spoke about, he didn't actually want an English character in this movie, but he just couldn't find kind of a straight-laced American type. I believe he asked, was it Robert De Niro? No, Jack Nicholson. Sorry, Jack Nicholson was actually meant to play the main role. He turned it down. And then he actually said the people he did have on the shortlist instead of Michael Caine were just too stylized or too sexy. He wanted someone a lot more straight-laced. So he loved Michael Caine, was a big fan. He hired him. Michael Caine was actually the person who introduced Mia Farrow into his life, which I thought was very interesting as well. And Michael Caine, let's focus on his character, his performance in this movie. The reason why I love it is because, honestly, I'm not going to say I'm a super fan of Michael Caine, but a lot of the movies I've seen of him, he's always played a very, a strong, assertive gangster, or this is a character, he's playing a comedic, dramatic role, and he shines in that in this movie. He narrates a lot of this movie as well. He narrates his own thoughts, narrates what he's doing. He plays this whimsical, slimy character, like you said, in love with one of his wife's sisters, and the way he pursues the relationship is one of the best comedy elements. There's a part where he has to run around a block just to kind of, make it seem like he just bumped into the sister, and the way he coerces her, and his whole journey through the film is comedic. It starts off kind of comedic, and then you obviously start off not liking him, and the way it resolves, it was an interesting character to look at him, and I just think as an actor, I think it really helps him having this movie in his performance, because it shows a side of Michael Caine I don't think we really get to see. I know he's done other comedies, even this year, he's done that, I think it's a British remake of the heist, this bank heist, this old fellas.
Going Out in Style.
Yeah, Going Down the Style, exactly. And I guess that's him trying to be comedic. But this role in particular, I think it stands out for Michael Caine. He was nominated for, I think he won an Oscar for this actual performance in this movie. And I
He
just
won
think,
an Oscar for this.
yeah, so I just honestly think
Wow.
this is great for Michael Caine. He was fantastic in this movie specifically. He's probably one of the best things in the movie. But I just ask your opinion on Michael Caine before we speak about the other acts, because I think he's great in this movie.
Okay. See, I just want to forget about this when I finished it. I don't want to sound harsh, but it's hard for me to just focus on him. And here's the reason why. We always refer to this period in Woody Allen's career as the experimental phase, right? Mm-hmm. He did all these experimental movies back to back between 82 and 86. And this felt like, okay, he felt it was time to revisit the classic setting of very human intellectual characters in Manhattan, right? And to me, the strongest bit of this film was his own character's storyline, again, dealing with mortality, dealing with death, and all that. The most famous bits of dialogue that are still lurking around and quoted from this film are all linked to Woody Allen's character narrating and kind of walking the audience through his experiences and his thought process and what he's thinking about. And that was so strong that it made everything else in the movie more dull for me, including Michael Caine. Michael Caine was very good. His demeanor and his kind of meek nerdiness reminded me of, at the beginning, of somebody who there's more to him. And it was almost kind of ominous or kind of weird. I was like, there's something to you. You can't be that innocent. It reminded me a little bit of his performance from Dressed to Kill, the Brian De Palma movie.
Never saw it. But yeah, no, it's cool. Never saw it.
I recommend it. He's great in that. My Gary performance by Michael Caine. But the point is, I thought there would be more to him. But his plot line just evolves around the cliche of he has a crush on Lee, the sister. Then they get into a romantic situation finally after all this lust thing over her. And once they begin the affair, the magic is immediately gone. He realizes he really likes his wife. And then the affair is just a pain in the butt. And they are both miserable. And nobody does anything about it up until Lee moves on. And to me, that wasn't that intriguing. And even though he gave a good performance, I couldn't really sympathize with it because I thought his character was just kind of pathetic.
Yeah, I mean, I was only talking about the character because I want to leave I'll talk about the story in a minute. But okay, that's your opinion, which I'll jump on in a bit later. But since you transitioned to Woody Allen, I will tell you, man, this is the biggest, easiest criticism to the movie to me.
Okay.
Because Woody Allen, his whole subplot in the movie is a completely different tone. It's great, don't get me wrong, but it feels like an unnecessary addition to the movie because all the other sisters, and including Michael Caine, their story is very encapsulated. They're all intertwined and the sisters in particular, they're all in each other's lives. Like Michael Caine, Woody Allen is on the side and he's got a comedy situation. And like you, it's great, but it's the family on one side, the ice cream, Woody Allen, whimsical, religious, philosophical situation on the other side. I'm like, it's like two different movies. It's like he tried to force his comedy movie into this family drama. Even to my surprise, he had so much material of his that he cut. And I'm like, this is a different movie. You being this television producer who's what's the word I'm looking for? Who's neurotic and not neurotic. He just thinks he's dying. Every little disease. I forgot. There's a word for it. Whatever.
Hypochondriac.
That's it. That's it. He's a hypochondriac, neurotic. He's at the height of his Woody Allen powers, and it is great, dude. Everything he said is right. Every line he says is great. This is the best material of him addressing his notions against religion, and it keeps on cutting into the movie. And to me, it's like, it doesn't fit the tone of the movie. It's great. I'm not going to deny that, but I'm like, this is such a different tone. If it wasn't for the fact he was Hannah's ex-husband, it would just be like he forced his character in here. And I think it's a big criticism. Even though it's good, which I won't deny, it just doesn't really fit with the movie. They try to tie it in at the end, but even he himself admits he didn't even want that direction for his character. So although it's good, it just doesn't fit the movie. It really doesn't on the story level. But his character's fantastic. His jokes are great. He's done this before. He's always injected this little bit. But this time, for some reason, he's like, this is the movie where I want to put all of these jokes in, and it's great. It really is. it could have been its own movie. It really could have been its own movie, but
That's what I thought. Yeah.
He forced it into this movie with this free, and I was just like, really? It's just so. That's my. I know it's really weird criticism, but I think it kind of stands out as a sore thumb, and I don't know why. I don't know if he thought this movie needed that level of laughter or levity, because it doesn't mismatch. Because Michael Caine has got a bit of levity, and the other sisters, like I said, they're all on one level, and Woody Allen's on a completely different level, and he forces his story in this movie, and I'm just like, dude, why'd you do that? I mean, it would. Let me play devil's advocate. If you take Woody Allen out of the movie, this is much more closer to Interiors than it should be. Woody Allen makes this movie a lot less of an Interiors movie. His character. If you take it out and you've got the sisters and just the Michael Caine thing, then you really have got a very, very similar movie to Interiors, which again would be bad. So I don't know if he saw that and put that in, but I'll let you respond to that before we get into the actual sisters as well, because I don't think it meshed well ultimately, but it's fun.
See, there's a lot of things to dissect from a technical perspective that might answer that, because basically I think the reason why a lot of people hold this movie in high regard, because it's sort of an updated version of a lot of Woody Allen classics. The soundtrack, using a lot of classical music. The cinematography. Once again, we're back in New York, Manhattan, and the city is a character again. So there's an actual subplot with one of the romantic interests for Holly, who's an architect, I believe, and he takes her around the city, showing her different buildings, and right there's a chance for Woody Allen to insert a bit of his opinions and his love for the city by having long descriptions and long panning shots of the scenery and the different buildings. And the whole thing is updated to the 80s. Back in the day, in the 70s versions of his films, New York was a completely different city. In real life, it was also economically challenged, but Woody Allen's New York was way more idealistic. Then in the 80s, Woody Allen's New York is more dirty and gritty, and he really zooms in on that aspect. Also, you see him in situations where his character Mickey feels out of touch. He's at a modern rock concert on a date with Holly in a flashback, and he just hates it. So there's a lot of that passing of the time, feeling out of touch with New York, being in the 80s. That's a huge element of the film, and once again, it clashes with the Interiors element, which is zooming in on the family and kind of what's going on in the characters' heads more so than what's going on the surface. This movie feels like 50% revisiting Interiors and 50% revisiting Manhattan, if that makes sense. And I get it why people like that, because both of those are really great Woody Allen movies and amongst my personal favorites as well.
Yeah.
But to me, it doesn't work when you mush them together.
Yeah.
It's like fish soup mixed together with a burger.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I can say. To me, the Woody Allen parts were good, but the Michael Caine parts could use more development and something a little bit more interesting. I get it that Woody Allen has a particular style of writing, and that makes all his characters very identifiable. Like, you can see his ideas or his personas reflected even in the Michael Caine character. And they make a specific point that Michael Caine's character and Hannah, played by Mia Farrow, have been together for 4 years or married for 4 years when he starts having these feelings to have an affair. And at this point, I think Woody Allen worked with Mia Farrow first in 1982. And here we are 4 years later in 1986. So I don't know how much of that has to do with reality.
Wow.
Woody Allen always ends up in these situations where people keep calling him out on exactly. Like, he always has to explain, like, no, that's not how, it's not real. And Annie Hall is I based it on Diane, but it's not based on our relationship. And I'm like, dude, you really make it hard on yourself when you keep casting your best friend as your best friend and your wife as your wife, and and these small bits of trivia, or calling backs to real life. So
I agree with what you're saying.
I'm not sure where to go with this. To me, it lacks impact in that area.
Well, you can. Don't worry. I want you to respond to what I'm saying as well, because let me get to the other characters as well. Now, the three sisters, Mia Farrow's character, again, I think she's growing as an actress, especially when she's playing this very I don't want to say mousy character, but she's playing a very devoted wife, a very devoted sister. And as the movie goes on, I mean, there's a one scene at the end I felt really bad for her, where they're like, "You're just too caring, you're just smothering me, you care so much," and you just see the look on her face. I think she does really good acting in this movie. Again, I think she keeps on improving after the Purple Rose of Cairo and all this. I'm like, wow, she's showing more layers, and Woody's giving her different directions. Actually, Woody allowed her to pick which sister she wanted to play. I don't remember why she picked this one, but I think she made a good choice as well, because I think
it was the title character, probably that's why.
I guess, but I just think out of the three sisters she could have played, I think she picked the right one. I think we wanted to see it, even though she did play a vulnerable character, I guess, in Purple Was a Cow as well. I actually thought she was really good, and I thought the other sisters who played Lee was actually dating some older man. And that's another Woody Allen classic, the old wise intellectual, somebody who's usually a college professor, like the
or
Midsummer Night's Dream, the Midsummer Night's Dream comedy thing, same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was
somebody of super high intellect who's more of a mentor than a boyfriend.
You know, he reminded me of you. He had a couple of lines. I was like, "Fuck everybody, I'm not going out." He was so grumpy. I was like, "This is Simon." The things he said were pretty true. I mean, but that relationship between her, that was interesting. They didn't go too much into it, but I thought that was fine. And the other sister, you mentioned the one that had all the issues and the cocaine, and who was just, jumping from one end to the other. Was that the Diane Weiss character?
Yeah, Holly. Yeah.
Holly. I mean, she wasn't that interesting until the end, where her character really had a metamorphosis. So what I'm getting to is the three sisters, and I'm going to draw the parallels to Interiors. They had the same kind of introspecting and the same kind of journey that the characters in Interiors had. The three sisters, they had so much angst towards each other. They had, it was there. I enjoyed it more here just because it wasn't just dour. Like Interiors was very one note. This one, they had a little bit more life to them, which is why I enjoyed this version of Interiors a bit more. And I know that Carrie Fisher was in the movie as a side character. She wasn't in the movie long enough for me to give her major props. There was a lot of actors in this movie. Like I think Louise Dreyfus, Elaine from Seinfeld, she had a small part. There was a lot of actors in this movie that have become bigger. This was a massive cast, and on a whole, because I want to put the actors aside, Woody Allen, great cast. I think the cast did really well, but again, this is a movie with a lot of characters to balance. And his character, he falls in his character so much in this movie. It helped. The movie needed it and was better for it, but I just felt like he actually took the shine away from the movie, especially when Michael Caine was a Woody Allen character as well. So you've got two Woody Allen characters in the movie. I thought it was, I know people love the movie. I just think it was a little bit of a mess. And although I enjoyed it overall, I still think you could have had two movies from this movie instead of one movie with 8 characters. But apart from that, because I don't want to just criticize shit on the movie, the cinematography is fantastic as usual.
Pretty good.
You see a lot of the interiors of these houses, these places where they go, plays, art museums. Even the movie is actually shot in Mia Farrow's house. The actual main scene of, that's her real house where she's married to Michael Caine. That's Mia Farrow's real house, which is really interesting. And the movie looks gorgeous. Just like you said, this movie is Manhattan in that. Manhattan's a lot more higher production, but there's a lot of beauty from Manhattan that's in this movie, and it looks great on a whole. There's a soundtrack to this movie, very good soundtrack as well. You mentioned it before, the classical music, the same with the jazz, it's all here. And again, I don't want to spend an hour on this movie because me and you have criticized it a lot, and I think this is a better version of Interiors.
No,
because it's not just dour. No, because honestly, it covers everything Interiors does with the family drama. You get to see a lot of introspection, but it has a lot of comedy. It has a lot more vibrance to it. Woody Allen's in the movie this time, so it's like, hey, this is Interiors on steroids. But I think it's a bit of a mess.
I disagree.
No, I'll disagree. You can tell me what's up. Well, why is this not as... And obviously, this is actually praised a bit more than Interiors anyway. But what do you think of that? Why do you think Interiors is better than this?
Well, one thing Interiors has over this is Diane Keaton, for one.
Of course,
how are you going to make a movie called Hannah... How are you going to make a movie called Hannah and Her Sisters and not cast Diane Keaton? I'm like, this was your opportunity. There you go. Do it. No. She's not in the movie. So that's number one. Number two.
Do it! Just do it!
That's what you said. Just do it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Shia LaBeouf. Thank you. But yeah, it sticks to his guns. It's supposed to be a dramatic movie dealing with a serious subject matter, and that's what it does. It sets the tone right, the acting is consistent, and you have the pace and the room to really focus on the characters and their development and the more introspective elements of the story. Here, because you have all these plot lines wish-wash together, you don't have time for that. You're rushing through the movie, and even the end result doesn't feel satisfying. And Diane Keaton's character in Interiors has all the Woody Allen introspective thoughts about, death and end and what does it mean to be alive and what's the legacy of an artist. Her character goes through that. So you didn't need to insert another character played by Woody Allen just for that element. Where here, you have that, but one of the big flaws is that Woody Allen's character barely interacts with anybody.
Yeah,
you only see him interacting with Mia Farrow in a flashback, and after that, he's on his own.
Yes.
Like, him and Michael Caine never talk. And I'm like, you were married to the same woman. Maybe if you guys would have a dialogue, we would understand how, Mia Farrow, who's prepped up to look, beautiful, be a great wife. She's a very sympathetic character. She carries it well. And everybody's criticism of her is like, you're too giving. I'm like, that makes every other character in a movie seem like an immediate asshole. I'm like, what kind of criticism is that? She's too giving? And even if I keep an open mind and try to level, like, okay, it can be overbearing, have to deal with somebody who can love so strong, but then be kind of hard to approach. Michael Caine says, it's hard to be around somebody who gives so much and needs so little in return. But I'm like, that's a tough concept to sell. You really need to show how this impacts his life on a daily basis. True. Otherwise, he just sounds like he's just a whiny little bitch.
Yeah.
And Woody Allen's character, who's prepped up to be whiny, he would have been great to say, see, I went through the same thing with her. This is where we went south. But that, like I said, it's a disconnected movie. That whole thing is about fertility and their relationship going south because his friend, played by Tony Roberts, gets involved as the surrogate dad. And that never gets developed enough where maybe it was cut from the film. And then Woody Allen's on his own. Yeah. So to me, it's not as good because the tone isn't as consistent.
Yeah.
And while I really enjoyed the beginning of the movie where you had all the great musical bits where every character had its own theme and it was very dynamic, and the way Mickey, played by Woody Allen, was introduced in the studio with one great joke after the other, that was all great. But then after a while, we spend a lot of time with Michael Caine and his BS, affair that's just pathetic. We spend a lot of time with Woody Allen narrating, which every time it gets interesting, we cut to another character. So to me, the movie doesn't work as well, and I prefer Interiors by a long shot. And yeah, the ending's disappointing because everybody gets their closure except Hannah, because she never realizes what went on in the background, and she never finds out about the affair.
That's a good point, and let me talk about the ending as well, because I never thought about that, and you're right. The ending does wrap up a lot of the character storylines, but it does leave Hannah in a... now that you brought that up, that does actually make me feel very bad for her. You know what I mean? And Woody Allen didn't actually want to write that ending for his character. That very, very... It was sweet. It was a very, very sweet ending. Had a little twist with the infertility thing, and he ended up with the sister he didn't like in the beginning. I thought it was really nice, really sweet. But when I found out that wasn't what Woody Allen wanted to do, he actually wanted to make it more grim. But I think he did film that ending and that idea, and he said it didn't actually match. And he actually said Interiors did that. Yeah, I think he actually did say the film like Interiors did end on a dour tone, but it actually made sense. It was more consistent in that way, and he couldn't pull it off here, so he decided to take it the other way.
What was the original ending he intended?
We'll talk about it off mic, because I don't exactly remember, but I just remember it was very unresolved. I don't think he ended up having brain tumor or anything like that, but I just think he ended up alone or whatever. But either way, I think he made the right decision. Ultimately, the fans loved it, and even though he said genuinely people love this movie, he still doesn't like the ending per se. And again, that's the conflict of an artist. Still, got to serve in your fans and stuff like that. But I will go back and say this in the beginning. I think, guys, if you're a big Woody Allen fan, you listen to me and Simon, we just don't love the movie as much as the rest. I don't think it's one of Woody Allen's best. I think it's a good movie, without a doubt. This is a good movie. It's not in my top 10. He's done movies like this before. He's going to do more again. And I'm sure we'll mention this movie as we speak about the other ones. And I'm a little bit perplexed with the number 3 spot this has got. I really am, because, I mean, it's a good movie. I just don't know why it's number 3 in the grand scheme of Woody Allen's filmography, when I just think it's a good movie. But, you know, I don't know. It is what it is. I'm glad that me and you kind of discussed it. And even though I liked it more than you, I was still glad to hear your criticism, and I think they're valid. I actually don't think, except for thinking it's better than TVS, that's a personal preference thing, which I understand. But again, you know, it is what it is. We don't have to agree, guys. And I always say that on the reviews. I actually like it when we don't agree, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot of flack for this one.
Yeah, who cares? I'm right, you're wrong. That's the end of it. Who cares about the fans? You don't know shit.
Let's give a round of applause to Simon for that.
What can I say? I mean, to me, probably the biggest flaw is the ending for me, because I get what Woody Allen's trying to do. He did this in The Purple Rose of Cairo, that he doesn't want to give you the Hollywood ending. He wants to give you a realistic, real-life ending, where in real life, just because you had an affair, doesn't mean that there's this great revelation in your life. Most of the time, it doesn't work out. You go back to your partner, and if it stays a secret, then life just goes on like nothing happened, which is exactly what happens in the movie. But to me, if you want to cash in that check, if you want to leave it unresolved, Hannah never finds out, and Michael Caine just goes like, well, I guess I like her better than I thought I did. You really need to follow it up. You really need to zoom in on that storyline and really show what happens to the characters next. You can't just cut it off and just call it a day. Because if you want to be ultra realistic, you gotta be ultra realistic with everything. And that's where the clash comes in, where Woody Allen has this very fairy tale like storyline where he goes on this journey because he thinks he's sick, very introspective, and then he figures out that Holly, who he dated many years before, is the one for her just because they bump into each other again. And suddenly sparks fly. Yeah, when they just bump into each other in New York, which is not a big place, by the way. Not many people live there, from what I hear. And they just happen to bump into each other, and then sparks fly. That's in direct contrast with the style of filmmaking he's exercising for the Michael Caine storyline, which is very real, very down to earth, kind of bitter. And then you have this fairy tale on the other end of it. It just doesn't work for me. And you really feel bad for Hannah's character. And that never really gets addressed or resolved.
Yeah, Anna's sister's shitting on her, by the way. Her sister's all attacked her at the end. I didn't think that was very nice as well, especially, you know, her, you know, when her and Holly had the argument, I gave you money, I support all the time, and she's like, you don't support me. I thought that was very unjust. And it's like you said, I don't really feel Hannah ever gets her, I don't want to say, I don't really think anyone...
Justice.
Yeah, justice. That's the perfect word, because I don't think anyone appreciates her. I don't think, it's like you said, yeah, it's funny it's called Hannah and her sisters, because the movie kind of focuses on everyone else except Hannah.
Yeah, she's just the glue tying the storylines together. And you know, I get, that's the part of ultra realistic filmmaking where you know people like that who are in a family situation where they're the anchor for everybody and never get the credit for it. And I get it. But that's why a movie like Interiors is better for me, because that is very well aware of what it is and what it wants to do and how it wants to accomplish that. Where here, it just seems a bit lost. You know, the narrative gets lost. We're not sure about the tone. And then on one hand, you have this character whose storyline feels very incomplete because it's supposed to reflect the imperfect nature of real life. But then you have all these other storylines that just keep wrapping up, and everybody gets their little internal monologue of how they completed their character arc, and you care less about it because you're like, oh, let's get back to the character who's actually likable a bit. Fuck Michael Caine.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, it doesn't matter what we think, because this movie has won 2 Oscars awards. It's, again, as we said in the beginning, it's the number 3 in the top 10 list of all the Woody Allen top 10 lists I could find. People love it, adore it.
Not mine.
IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, are 9s and 10s. I would actually like to, I don't know if this was loved so much at the time. Maybe now people need to watch it again, because I think this movie is flawed in a lot of ways. But again, as I said a million times, before you crucify us, I think it's still a good movie. And I think Simon still says it's good, just not as good as his favourite movie of all, Interiors.
Well, not my favourite movie at all, but it's just a revisiting of stuff that was done better. It was a revisiting of late 70s Woody Allen, you know?
Yeah.
You know, post Annie Hall. like between 77 and 80. It's revisiting that era of 6 years later, and it's just not as good for me. I think you hit it on the nail on the head when you said it should have been 2 movies. I think that would have worked better.
One thing I didn't mention, Woody Allen did say he wanted to make this into like a book type of movie because he was inspired by the movie Anna Katerina, I think it's called, and he actually, he chaptered every part of the movie. You get the title cards with the chapter.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think this movie is very influential, though, not just because of some of the soundtrack choices that became staples after that. Like you hear these classical pieces inserted into films after this movie all the time up until today, but also Tarantino's whole style of writing and how he does it in his films comes directly from here. If you think about Reservoir Dogs, with the characters' names being titled all the time as for each chapter, as like not only a start of a new chapter but introduction to a new character. That's the opening of this film, where you have all the different characters being introduced in a different chapter, and you see the title come up, like the hypochondriac, the sister in between, or something like that.
Yeah, and I just for the record again, I actually loved seeing Woody Allen in the TV network environment. I actually wanted a movie of Woody Allen in that. He's so neurotic and everyone talking at him. And I actually think it's a shame he never did the movie, if I can remember. I don't think he's ever did the movie in a TV network environment because I think it's prime for his type of comedy, and because he's a stand-up comedian as well, I think I don't know why he never did it. Again, I might be wrong because I can't remember all his movies right now, but I'm sure he never did one in a TV network environment. When I just saw that, I was like, I want to see this character's life. I want to see this movie. I think I really wanted that movie separate from this movie, but still, again, it is what it is. So I don't want to go on and on about the movie, guys. There was so much behind the scenes material on this movie. Again, I said that some of the behind the scenes stuff of Woody Allen making these movies are just as interesting, if not more interesting, than the movies themselves. So again, I'm going to give a shout out to the Woody Allen's Watcher's Guide. Check out this movie in the Woody Allen's Watcher's Guide, and all the stuff this fellow put into the book is really good. Get it on Amazon Kindle. I'll put a link in the description. It's really good stuff, really cheap. So we're going to wrap it up there, Simon, because we're just going on a 40-minute recording on Hannah and the Sisters, and we didn't say it was the greatest movie of all time. People hate us right now, and it is what it is, guys. Opinions. Don't forget opinions. I'm not scared of the people, Simon. I know you think I am, but I just want to put it out there. I'm very aware this is so loved, and But guys, I really hope you see the criticism, and maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, maybe you brought light to things you never thought of, because some of the things Simon said actually made the movie more interesting. And it might make it more interesting on another viewing, because I would watch this movie again. Anything else to say, Simon, before we get out of here?
No. I think we said what we needed to say.
We did. So, guys, don't forget to leave us a comment on the iTunes ranking, on the podcast. Give us a like on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. Don't forget, all links in the description. And again, we got the website, WoodyAllenRetro.com, for all the other discussions we've covered, because we're diving in on Woody Allen. We're coming to the late 80s now. We're getting to the 90s. We're going to catch up sooner or later. Go to the website to check out all the other recordings. And again, I will thank my buddy Simon Rath for joining me on this one.
Yeah, let's watch a different movie, though. I'm ready to move on.
Guys, click the annotation on the screen to check out the other videos we do here on Planet Tyro. And until then, we'll see you in the next recording.